2414 is a podcast about finding hope and common ground through casual conversation. Like the friends on the road in the New Testament, in Luke chapter 24, verse 14, we want to walk away with more understanding that leads to more conversation as the journey continues. Thanks for walking with us.
Hey, welcome to 2414. My name's Dan, and I'm sitting today with my longtime faraway friend, Dave Reddel. Hi, Dave.
Hey, how
oh my
are
goodness, I'm happy to see you.
It's awesome. Straight from the airport into the car and right here to recording studio.
Yeah, so I picked up Dave at Seattle-Tacoma Airport a half hour ago. He flew in because he and I, in just a couple of days, are going to run around Mount Hood, called the Timberline Trail. It's about 42 miles if we don't get lost, and 9,000 feet or so of elevation going up, and also 9,000 feet elevation going down, spread out over somewhere between 12 and 16 hours.
We'll be coming around the mountain.
Yeah, all day we'll be coming around the mountain. So we thought it'd be kind of interesting. I thought it'd be interesting. You can choose to listen or not, to have a conversation about friendship, running. I've known Dave for 10 years or so now. Goodness gracious. That seems...
Yeah, when did you arrive here in Federal Way?
I arrived in Omaha, I want to say in 13, and here at 17.
Okay.
And we're in now August of 22. So
that's been a very quick 5 years.
Yeah, it's been a strange 5 years.
Yeah.
2 or 3 of them, I feel like they don't count of
right.
Just this COVID time warp. So, Dave and I just wanted to have some conversation about running, about our expedition. We've exchanged maybe 10 emails about this thing. We've not had a single conversation about our run until I picked them up in the car today. And I thought we should just capture that for other people who are scratching their heads going, why does anybody run, let alone far distances, let alone out in the wilderness? Or maybe you're a runner and you're like, this is awesome. I want to run around Mount Hood. But which is probably not too much of our audience.
A very small part.
Yeah, it's all right. So, but as always, I want to start with lows and highs and question of the day. So the question of the day is, how do you spend your time on an airplane? What's your default activity? Think about a low. A challenging, frustrating thing in your day or week or hour, a high, a celebration, and how do you spend your time on the airplane? And so I'll go first so that you have time to think, which means you're not going to be a good listener, but that's okay. Let's see, a low. I don't know if I have a low from today. I guess that's my low. So yesterday evening, I got to meet with a couple for premarital counseling, which I just love it. And as we're talking, I'm like really intentionally being a good active listener. And in the middle of that, I caught myself going, I don't do this with my actual friends and family very well. And I was like, really convicted of I'm like talking to this couple about marriage and listening. And I'm trying so what I hear you saying is this. And then, I flip a switch and I assume Charlotte should know what I was thinking and why I was thinking it, and she should have known that I was hungry and was going to come home at this time, and why are the kids doing this? It's probably her fault, and she's probably doing this on purpose to make me mad, which is all ridiculous. So I'm embarrassed at my listening skills and my lack of grace towards my wife and kids sometimes. That's my low for the last day. High is I'm excited for this week. I've been looking forward to this for a long time, and packing is a fun high. I got my little paper checklist and going down the list, and so packing, getting ready for our big expedition. And what do I do on airplanes? I used to always sleep. I couldn't stay awake. I would fall asleep before we took off and then wake up on the runway when we land. And then for a season, I was really good at doing work. And now I think I've been running hard enough at work, and it's uncomfortable enough on the plane. I just watch a lot of Netflix. I'm like, I should do work. I'm like, I'm crowded. It's not comfortable. Yeah. Forget it. I'll just watch TV. So my default is I download a lot of Netflix, and that's what I do. So Dave, low, high, what do you do on an airplane?
On an airplane, Today was different. Today was usually on an airplane. I usually have a book or I've got my music on, not really paying attention a whole lot, hoping that, one, they don't take away my aisle seat, which they almost did today.
How tall are you, Dave? You're not that tall, but you're 6'2". Okay, you're bigger than me.
Yeah.
So,
but I say thank you to Alaska Airlines for the legroom. That was much better than most airlines. It was very good.
And that's not just a local pandering shout out. That
was very good. So, but today was different. I would just kind of do that, get in my own zone. If somebody wants to sit next to me, wants to talk, that's great. I'll do that for a while. But today, I was actually trying to be in the moment, to be present and to be aware of what was happening, good or bad. And as I was telling you on the ride over, sitting in the Omaha airport waiting to get into the plane was this, my mind was just completely blown away. It was this different perspective from the last time I'd been on an airplane. It was just a cacophony of noise, of distraction, of people just, whew. And I was trying to sit there and just to be silent, to kind of be in the moment and just observe what I usually do, which is I'm on my headphones or I'm on my phone or I'm on my laptop or not paying attention to anybody else. And so it's pretty convicting to see kind of the distractions of our world and where we've headed in the digital age to the point where there really wasn't any conversation happening between anybody, even spouses. It was, and I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer here, but it was very eye-opening for me to actually experience that and to think about that differently. And even getting on the airplane, I had a seat in between that was open between myself and the other gentleman. I could tell her immediately right away that he didn't want anything to say to me or talk. Oh, that's fine. But I did listen to the entire 3-hour conversation of the guy behind me that talked nonstop.
Yeah.
And it was, again, it's very convicting for me because I do that too. But the conversation at the end of those 3 hours was nothing more than the surface at best. And that just was kind of convicting to me that, man, we have so many opportunities where we just have this kind of captive audience time where we can sit and have a conversation with somebody, but then we simply talk about who we are and what we do and the greatest and next vacation we're going to or the things we just bought. But at the end of the day, there wasn't a slice of faith in any of that conversation. And that convicted me to say, well, what's my next opportunity? I mean, my conversation should be, if not starting with that, it should be speckled with throughout that conversation of having an opportunity, at least an invitation to speak into something that's different than the weather or the Cubs. So that was the kind of the low point of, and that's kind of my low point too, is that, I've got a lot of work to do.
Was your low more seeing it in others or being convicted for yourself, or
both? Because seeing it in others hit home to me that that's me in that situation, or that is definitely me in that situation.
Yeah.
I don't want to be that. I want to be something completely different. And some of this is coming out of a book that I've been reading or have read through several times now. John Mark Comer's book called The Relentless Elimination of Hurry.
Okay, yeah.
Wow, pretty convicting book. But just some of those things that came out of that book are just that, of just being present in the moment and realizing that God's given you an opportunity to just be yourself and to have the act, the art of conversation here.
Yeah.
Of just having a conversation with somebody, and it can go beyond the worldly secular topics that we all kind of designate at the start of this, the talk, that this is all we can talk about. We can't talk about that over there.
Yeah.
But we really should. So that's kind of convicting low point.
Okay.
High point, to your point, I've been training, running, doing other events, but this one's always been on my calendar. It's always been like a bucket list race, not race, but an experience. And this week all kind of hit home as we shared emails back and forth. And we did discuss some things,
Like
Not in detail,
flight time, what day we're going to do this.
how far it was around, how, we had to cross water.
Yeah, we're ready.
We have our packs.
Yeah.
We're good. So, yeah, there won't be aid stations, but Charlotte will help us. So it was good. So that was really exciting. I mean, those kind of weeks of preparation and kind of anticipation, those are the best. Yeah, and then now that you're right here, ready to do it, it's awesome.
This is awesome. Yeah. So this is happening. So maybe we could give people a sense of what we're going to do and what we expect. And I also, if there's time, I'd love to get something of I was going to say running start, but then that just sounds cheesy, but that's what you call out, background, maybe is a better way of saying it. Some background. So, I know you have a lot of runner friends, but maybe did you describe this to any non-runner friends? Hey, I'm going to fly out to Seattle. Did you get a chance to tell anybody what you're going to do? Or how would you succinctly capture what we hope to do this weekend?
Most of them, there's a lot of non-runner friends at work, and they've heard of other things that I've done in the past.
Yeah.
So this one didn't faze them, but it was also an affirmation for them that, there's something not right with Reddel.
Reddel's off.
Yeah, he's running around the mountain. Is there a tram up the mountain? Is there a gift station or a gift?
Is it a
up there?
race?
Yeah, no, it's not a race. Like, well, what is it? Experience. Silence. Radio silence.
That's awkward. Yeah, so we're going to drive down tomorrow, and on Saturday we're going to get to the Timberline Lodge, which is on the south side of Mount Hood, and in a clockwise direction, we're going to run around this trail called the Timberline Trail. It's about 42 miles. I said about 9,000 or so feet up and down throughout the day. We have to cross, I don't know how many rivers / streams. Some of them might be ankle deep. Some might be waist deep. It's a lot of snow melt, so it'll be cold and potentially fast moving.
Who doesn't think that sounds like fun?
Sounds, yeah.
Are you serious?
Sounds adventure. And there's going to be miles of running through like sand. It's a very dusty, dirty, sandy
that's not so
trail.
much as fun. Okay.
I call shotgun for that segment. That's where it's going to be a race, when it's really dusty, when somebody doesn't want to be in behind, or we'll like be a quarter mile behind. You go ahead, I'll meet you up there. And so we'll be running out of water and filtering water from streams, and hopefully we can manage our calorie intake. So let me just pause there for hydration, nutrition. Do you have an actual plan? Do you have like the scientific math behind what you expect to do?
I do. Just based on a lot of the other races that I've run, probably over the last, actually from 2016, 2017, when you were last in Omaha is when I started really ramping up into races. So I've probably run 30 ultras since then.
And ultra means?
Anything above a marathon. So typically 50K, 50 miler, 100K, a couple 100 milers. I did an FKT on the Wabash Trail a couple years ago.
Fastest known time.
Congratulations. Unsupported.
Ooh.
And it was 100K. And unsupported meant
100K is about 62 miles or so.
62 miles. And it means you have no support whatsoever. You have to carry your own water. And I actually had to check in these small little towns to see if their water spigot was available and open on the trail, because that's the only water you could get.
For 62 miles.
So I'm a little bit used to doing that kind of redlining nutrition, redlining food.
So what's your plan?
The plan is that I'll have a hydration vest. I'll carry a couple waters in the front, one in the pack. Food, I usually try to get 200 calories per hour, whether that's through a gel or whether it's through a Honey Stinger waffle bar or something else.
Oreos? Do you bring junk food with you?
I do. I bring candy slices.
Okay.
They're easy to chew and they go down well. And my go-to though is the oatmeal cream pies.
Ooh.
Those things are loaded with calories, like 500 calories. And if you mush it, it's 2 bites and it's down your throat. So you don't even have to eat it, and boom, it's 500 calories.
So I love, this is what's fun about especially long distance runners, is that there's excitement over how many calories we can pack in. Like, most people are like, oh no, there's so many calories in this small thing, it's not worth it. We're like, you mean I can get 500 calories in 4 ounces of weight or whatever, like the better density.
Well, at the end of the day, after this run, we'll probably lose 6,000 to 7,000 calories, maybe more than that.
Yeah.
Which is not atypical. That's pretty normal.
Yeah. Well, for those of you who haven't done long runs, you, especially once you get over 30 miles and beyond, you need more calories to finish the event than you start with. But because your body's something of a zero-sum game, that your blood that's pumping through is powering your muscles, but it's also cooling off your engine. But it's the same blood that also goes to your stomach to digest and process things. So if it's processing food, it's either not cooling you or not propelling you. And so the faster and harder you're going, then the less able your body is to take calories in, and then it just sits in your stomach or comes back up on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And so it's this really strange dance of balancing temperature and exertion and calories. So anything over 30 plus miles, you need to bring in more calories to complete it, but your body almost, unless you're walking, you can't take in enough calories to make up for what you're losing.
Right.
So we'll probably eat 200 to 300 calories an hour for anywhere from 10 to 15 hours. So that'll be, what's the math on that? We're taking in 3,000 calories, but we'll probably still lose pounds.
Yeah, easily double that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing I do too for water is I actually add electrolyte mix to it. And some people use Gatorade, some people have other stuff. I use a thing called Liquid IV. It's not a plug for the product.
I've heard about that recently.
It's cheap. You get it at Sam's or Walmart. It's fantastic. I mean, it adds electrolytes, it adds salt, magnesium, potassium, all those things that you never really think you need. But when you bonk, you realize you really need all that stuff.
How would you describe bonking to a non-expert trail runner?
Bonking is you think your run's going great, and then you probably don't pay attention that you have enough water left or for the next aid station, or enough food, and so you miss a little bit, and then maybe you miss a little bit more, and all of a sudden your body starts to not shut down, but it starts to raise a red flag, and the governor in your head is telling your body, hey, we have a problem here. And the problem is you have no calories in your body, and you start to feel sick. You might throw up, or you might get dizzy. I mean, I've had a lot of that stuff. So once you realize that, you need to get either to an aid station, which we won't really have here.
We're going to be fine, by the way, buddy. Don't worry about us.
We'll be fine. Or in your pack, you have all this stuff, and you just stop and you kind of add the stuff, and you get back to a little bit of an equilibrium where that red lining is not red, it's on the edge.
Yeah, and my experience is it's very, very difficult to catch up. So by the time you've realized it, it's kind of too late. And that might mean you don't finish and you drop out, or it means it's kind of a hard stop for a while and you got to regroup, which I think is probably true in a lot of things in life, especially if a problem is there. Kind of staying on top of things is really good, but by the time you get to a point where it's a problem, boy, the recovery is so much harder. It's like a lot of things. Early detection is key in just about everything in life.
Yeah, definitely.
And I know for me as well, it's especially if I feel like I'm having a good day, I don't pay as close attention to it. And so I'm like, oh, I'm good. I don't need the calories today. Like, today's a special day. Yeah. I'm having a special run. And so I don't need to follow the plan I came up with when I was thinking clearly and in my right mind. And then I get behind on calories, and then the electrolytes go down, and I don't know the science behind those, but I know my brain stops working. Like, I can't think as clearly. Yeah. So now I'm not making good decisions, and my body's weak and stumbling and having a hard time. At the same time, my brain's like, we don't know how to do this anymore.
But other than that, this is a
It's going to be
great decision that we're making right now to run this.
It's going to be awesome.
That's true, because in 2016, I ran the Superior 100, and the race was going amazingly well. I was way ahead of pace time. I was like 2 hours ahead. And you know, you get a little cocky. You're like, oh, this is going great. Train well. This is going. And then one of my crew members said, how's it going? My feet hurt a little bit, but other than that, it's okay. Well, I never really stopped to think about that. The next aid station, I was like, I feel like I got rocks in my shoes. Well, it wasn't rocks. It was blisters. So I had blisters in that race from mile 32 to mile 100. And I won't go any further in detail, but basically the bottoms of both my feet were pretty much gone by the time that race was over.
Needed some medical attention.
So it was a really bad decision, but it was a good decision to finish, because there's some really good stories there, but it was one of those days where you just weren't. And ultra runners, once you get past a certain point, you're, like you mentioned, you're not thinking clearly at all.
Yeah.
That's why we need Charlotte.
Yeah. So what's going to happen is Dave and I are going to, if you can picture the face of a clock, and Mount Hood is in the center, and the course around it, the fancy word is we're going to circumnavigate. It feels very impressive to say circumnavigate. We're going to circumnavigate Mount Hood. So we're going to start at 6 on the clock, and we're going to go counterclockwise. And so it's about 13 miles to what I refer to as the first aid station, which is really just one of the couple trailhead access points. So my wife Charlotte is going to drop us off at the lodge. We're going to run for maybe close to 2 to 4 hours, closer to 4 than 2 probably. And we're going to get 13 miles in. At the same time, Charlotte is going to be driving across unpaved roads in my little sedan.
Please pray for her.
Yeah. And it's going to take her just about as long to get there as it's going to take us. But we're going to have conversation and not be bouncing. Yeah. And so at that point, she'll have all the food that we've packed in the car. She'll have some drinks to be able to refill us. She'll have dry socks and shoes if we want it. It'll be a bailout spot. If somebody's in a bad spot, we'll be able to call it a day there. And otherwise, she'll say, I'll see you in a little bit. And then we'll run from, if you can picture, about 1 or 2 o'clock on the clock face, maybe 2 o'clock, over to about 10 o'clock on the clock face. So it's another 12 miles from there to what's called Top Spur, which is another access point trailhead. So we're going over the top of the mountain on the north side of the mountain, but there's no roads that way. So Charlotte's going to drive clockwise now from 2 o'clock all the way over to the 10 o'clock on the other side.
I think she should get all the accolades for.
Oh my goodness, she's going to have a much harder day. So then once again, we'll meet her there. We'll grit our teeth and say, yes, we're going to finish. Why would you ask that? We'll shake some dust out of our shoes, maybe get a wet wipe to clean up a little bit, more calories, more fluids. And then from 10 o'clock on the clock face down to the 6 is kind of the home stretch. First half of that will be some good downhill running. And then we'll get to this really beautiful waterfall area called Ramona Falls, which is where I tapped out in my solo adventure last time. We've changed our aid station. So there's basically 4 if you count. Timberline Lodge is car access. Cloud Cap, where Charlotte's going to meet us the first time. Top Spur, which is where she's going to meet us this time at 10 o'clock on the clock face. And then Ramona Falls is down by, 8 o'clock or so on the clock face, which is where Charlotte met me last time. So I didn't see her from 2 o'clock on the clock face until to 8 o'clock on the clock face. And by the time I was done there, the parking lot from where the trail is, it's another 3-mile hike out. So I was done, and then I had to get to Charlotte, which meant walking for the past 5 miles, which for some of you sounds really long, and it is, but at the end of a long day, those are like 30-minute miles.
Yeah.
Maybe 35, 40-minute miles. So walking 5 miles,
it feels like 15 miles.
It's hours.
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally hours at that point. And then I found Charlotte, and I was like, "Where's the car?" And she's like, "Well."
Oh, no.
And so then it was a 3-mile hike back because she didn't know where I was, and there were a couple different routes I could have met her at the falls, and she was afraid I would go the other one. She's like, "Well, I know he has to come through here." It's kind of this pinch point where these routes come together. So I got there, and then it was 3 miles out, which was horrendous.
Well, so you technically did the circumvention lengthwise because you walked an extra.
I got really
8
close.
miles. I mean, very close.
So I think I did about 39 or 38 miles overall of the 42. It's just I didn't do the final segment.
Yeah.
Which is going to be one of the harder segments, by the way. When people do this trail, they can go clockwise or counterclockwise, and there are pros and cons of each. The biggest con for what we're doing is, I forgot the elevation gain, but basically the final 3 miles are just going to be uphill and sand.
Fantastic. I did not know that. I appreciate that.
So I haven't been there yet. This is what I've been told.
Well, the good thing is that you mentioned the points on the clock.
Yep.
So in the ultra running world, those are huge. And typically in a race, those are aid stations. Those are things you look forward to. They're ways to break up your race. So you don't think, oh, how am I going to do 42 miles? 13 miles, another 8, another 10. Yeah. You get to see somebody friendly. They have cold water. It's an oasis. It's awesome.
Yeah. And even breaking it up kind of before that, like, okay, if it's 13 miles to the first aid station, probably about 6 or so we'll stop for water. So, we'll just make it 6 miles, refill, make another 6 miles, refill. So the biggest advantage of going the direction we are is most of the more, I don't want to scare my family or other listeners. If you're listening to this, we made it back. So I'll tell Shane not to post this until we successfully make it back.
We have a spot tracker, right? We do have a spot.
Yeah, so we'll get to some safety concerns.
We'll be fine.
But one of the biggest advantages of going counterclockwise is you cross the rivers earlier in the day. And as the sun comes up and it gets warmer, the water flow tends to increase. So the rivers get a little more challenging later in the day. So if we went the other way, we would have the major river crossings at the worst part of the day.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, so it's sand trade-off versus rushing rivers.
Yeah.
So David, is this part of a formal race? Did we have entry fees and bib numbers?
No, it's not, and it's an experience. But the cool thing is it's so much more than running. I mean, people may have listened to the first 15 minutes of this and said, hey, that sounds super hard, which it is.
Yeah.
Somewhat daunting and physically painful. All three of those are true.
Yeah.
But none of those line up in comparison to the opportunity we get for 14 whatever hours to just simply have conversation. Because in an ultra running experience like this, it's not a 10K, it's not a 5K. You don't have a PR you're shooting for. You're not running 7-minute miles where you can't talk to anybody. Here you get to actually have a conversation all throughout the day with one of your best friends and out in the wilderness of God. And you get to experience just like I mentioned before, a captive audience kind of time of sharing all kinds of things. To me, that's the greatest thing of ultra running is you're racing against, or you're running against yourself just to better yourself. You're not running against somebody else. But at the end of the day, you're actually sharing life on the trail with somebody, which is more important than anything.
Yeah, and in a pretty cool sort of pinch me environment too. We'll have views of Mount Hood most of the day. We'll have rivers and fields and wildflowers. There will also be sand, and we'll have scrapes and falls, and we'll have squishy shoes. And I read one recent report. Somebody said on the west side of the mountain, the bugs are apocalyptic was the phrase they used.
Ooh.
So
I did not read that.
Yeah. So one of the things we'll be carrying with us is bug spray. Okay. So I've got a lot of bug spray. I forgot the number of DEET, but it'll certainly cancer causing, like levels of DEET, so very intense. So I shouldn't joke about that, but it's going to be very potent bug spray. Other things we'll be carrying with us. What's in your pack, Dave, or what should have been in your pack?
In addition to the food and water that I'm carrying, I'll have a headlamp. I'll have a buff. I'll carry.
What's a buff?
A buff. It's like a kind of a flexible headband that you wear, kind of ultras wear, that either you can wear it to keep sweat out of your eyes, or sometimes I wear it on my wrist so I can wipe it. You can wear it around your neck. It's kind of like a gaiter when it's really cold. So it's kind of a multi-purpose thing. That
I think if you picture a short sleeve T-shirt and you cut off the sleeve,
yeah,
and then you can market that and call it a buff, and ultra runners will buy it.
Yeah. One of my running friends he hasn't put it to market, but he's come up with an idea of using the buff for that time when you need help in the woods and there's no restroom.
Yeah. All right.
But I told him that would pretty much be a one-time use buff.
It's a single use buff.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense to actually market that.
Okay. So you got a buff. What else are you taking with you?
Sunglasses I'm bringing. I'll bring my phone. I'll bring an extra pair of socks. I'll bring some moleskin for some blisters. I usually don't need to use those, but I'll bring that. And then I'll bring what I use is called bag balm.
Yep.
Other people use squirrel's nut butter or other stuff.
Body Glide is a brand.
I mean, that, my friends, for me is crucial.
Yep.
Because if you don't stay up with that,
There's something called chafing that runners experience.
Your day will turn into
friction.
a horror.
Yeah,
very quickly.
Friction is not your friend, and it can make your day miserable in the moment. And I found that especially, even if I think I manage it well, the first moment in the shower later is where you figure out every single spot where there was clothing rubbing against you, and that can be no fun.
Favorite running hat?
Okay.
My favorite shirt or shirts, or I'm gonna run with shorts, and then I'm a Hoka guy.
Yeah.
So I'll have my
brand of shoes.
Yep.
I've similarly got Hokas. I think you put me onto those. And in addition to that, I'll be carrying a handheld GPS that doubles as like a satellite communication. So for those of you who are terrified that we're making reckless decisions, we are having some adventure, and there's risk in anything, but I'll be able to communicate with any number of people around the world, even when we don't have cell phone reception. So it'll help us with navigation and in communication. I'll be giving updates to people back at home all along the way. Charlotte and friends and family can be tracking us, or at least tracking where my GPS is. So, I mean, if it falls down a ravine, that's where they'll go looking for us. But we'll be able to communicate. We'll be able to navigate. And then, assuming it all goes well, I mean, we're going to eat afterwards one way or another, but Dave and I were sharing on the way over here that best case scenario, we finish in enough time that we can shower and have dinner. Yeah. Which isn't a given.
No, but that is the goal. I mean, the goal is actually bigger than that. The goal is actually to really slow down and experience the day.
Yeah.
But to have that closing meal, breaking bread would be awesome.
It's amazing how after, maybe it's not amazing. It's probably totally expected and normal, but I realize it in these moments when, after going through a difficult thing, I have such a new perspective on normal things. A shower, clean water, clothes that are clean, and sitting down for a relaxed meal with friends. I mean, it feels like the biggest reward on earth. Like, it almost feels like it shouldn't be fake. Like, it's too good to be true. To have a shower and dry clothes and a meal with friends, like, that is the pinnacle in some ways. Yeah. And yet those are things I have every single day that I don't notice.
Yeah. Being on the trail helps you recognize the simple things of life that we take for granted. Because there's a lot of times where you're dreaming about a can of Coke.
Yeah.
Every day you can get one of those, big deal. But you begin to realize how fun, but how hard it is what you're doing. But only, life, the challenges in life, they require you to do things in a hard fashion sometimes to actually see the end of the day. So it like you said, at the end of the day, when you get back and just realize just the simplicity of life, just the miracles that happen every day, the things that we as Americans, as the top 0.7% of everybody in the world, that we take for granted everything, it just hits closer to home of how blessed and how thankful and how grateful we are to be out in silence and solitude in his majesty, because not everybody gets to experience that. I'd love to have more people experience that, but not everybody gets a chance to do that.
Yeah. If you ask me what are like the top 5 meals I've ever had in my lifetime, I've gone to a couple of nice restaurants and I've had some great, very classy meals, but one of my first images in my mind is it was a 50K I did out here in Washington in Issaquah up on Tiger Mountain. And one of the kind of impromptu aid stations that the race put on was somebody with a little, like a propane, like a small little grill in just the middle of the woods. And they had cheese quesadillas with bacon in them. And it was just, fat and sugar and everything I wanted. My body was so craving. And it's just this oasis, middle of nowhere. It was a cheese quesadilla with bacon. And if you said like, Weber, what, tell me about like one of your top meals you've ever had. Like that's one of the first ones that pops in my mind.
That's amazing.
It was so good.
Quesadillas are the bomb on the trail though. They absolutely are. I had something similar to that. I ran the Hitchcock 100 in Omaha this past December, 100 miler, December. Woo. Hitchcock.
Omaha. It's
cold. 21,000 feet elevation gain.
21,000.
Yeah, it's actually more elevation gain than Western States 100, and it's in December. Who would sign up for some stupid thing like that? Well, a bunch of Omaha people do. But I was on, and there's 8 loops. I was on, I think it was loop 6, and it's middle of the night, and your headlamp, and you've got a pacer, and my pacer said, "We're getting to the Oasis," which is one of the aid stations, and he said, "You're not going to believe what they have there." And I thought, oh, this is going to be great. Get there. They had Jello shots with no alcohol. Just like
Jello
shots.
Okay.
That was the most glorious moment of that whole race. Because I just snarfed down like 4 Jello shots. And they're full of sugar. They got calories. But just the coolness and I thought I had never. It was like manna from heaven. It was incredible.
Jello. I couldn't. I think I'd throw that up. I don't think I could do Jello.
Yeah, there's some food,
and it kind of depends on the day of like what sounds good.
Salted potatoes that they have at aid stations, I will not touch.
Okay.
Ugh.
I don't like watermelon, but I know a lot of runners like it's the best because it's full of water. And
I won't do that. Okay. Oranges, yes. Watermelon, no.
Yeah.
But quesadillas.
I think I had a slice of pizza when we ran. Dave and I ran a 100K race that one was an organized run.
Pigtails
Challenge out at Lake Young's here. I think they had pizza one of the loops, and
did.
Well, that was my first 100-kilometer race. I say race, it's just what they're called, event. Typically, as Dave said a few times, we're not racing. Some people are, by the way. Some people are racing to win, and that's awesome. I'm not at that level, and so I participate for different reasons. But that was my first 100-kilometer run event. And one of my favorite things is Charlotte and the kids come out because they're awesome supporters. You probably got that already. But Charlotte, she comes out. So Dave and I are running the 100-kilometer event, which is 62 miles. They also have, I think it was like 50K, 50-mile, 100-kilometer, 100-mile, and they did a 200-mile event, with people just running for days. So literally, so Charlotte comes out with the kids, and they've got these cowbells, and they're going crazy for us. And one of the organizers runs over and says, "Shh, quiet. People are sleeping in the tents because they've been out there running for days, and they just like a half hour of sleep. They just wanted to rest." And my family's out there with the cowbells.
They should be.
It was awesome.
That's a staple at ultra runs.
Yeah, cowbells are a big deal.
Yeah. I think those people in the tents probably didn't hear any of that.
Yeah.
They were probably pretty trashed out.
Yeah. So you Dave, you mentioned earlier, I don't know, 2000, whatever, 14, 15, 16, started ramping up in your life. I remember we ran it might have been our first 50K together, called Psycho Wyco. Remember that? You had me at Psycho.
Kansas City.
Yeah, and that was a 50-kilometer race. And if my memory serves me correctly, you ran in high school.
Correct.
And then I don't think you ever ran any marathons. And then we signed up for this 50-kilometer event in the snow. Once again, a very hilly, snowy, rough condition. So it's my friend Dave here and another friend Dave of ours, and we're training in Omaha in the winter, and our water bottles are freezing because it's negative degrees. And if I can tell on you for a second, Dave, you and other Dave didn't finish that race. It was a hard day and it was first event, and I knew going into that race both of you guys were in better shape than me, but that mental, you hadn't done that length of a race. And then I finished it and I kind of peaked there, and then Dave's like, oh, I got this. And since then you've run tons of races far beyond what I've ever run. And that, it just fascinates me that somebody who hadn't been running, I don't know how you describe your running life in those years ahead of that, but maybe casual or recreational, and all of a sudden in your 40?
Late
40s said, oh, I've got a new hobby. Now I run 100-milers.
Yeah.
Like what was that? How did that happen?
So high school, I grew up a gym rat. My dad was a basketball coach and cross country coach and track coach. And so I ran high school, 2 mile. I was decent. But after that, in college, I would run recreationally. I'd do 10Ks and 5Ks. And as I got older, had kids, that kind of disappeared a little bit. And then it came back, and you'd run the local race in Omaha, the 10K or whatever. But never ran anything more than 10K or even a half marathon. Then I was running trails at the invitation of a friend in Omaha, and I ran into these group of guys all my age, same stage of life, kids and all that kind of stuff. And it just clicked. So we started running together on Saturday mornings, and we're called the Breakfast Club. So we've been running together for 8 years now, something like that. All these guys are really good. I mean, most of these guys are podium finishers in their age divisions.
Were they when you started with them?
Not all of them, but some of them were. But it was always fun to actually run with them and to keep up with them. And I'm about the same level they are right now. But we've had so many experiences of doing that. I would not have done and stuck with trail running if it wasn't for this group it's basically a very tight-knit small group of guys that just love on each other, and the families love on each other, and it's really been a fun thing. It's much more about life and sharing life than it is running, but we do super fun adventures. I've paced some of these guys at Western States, or at the Wasatch 100 in Utah, or at Superior in Minnesota, or all kinds of other races, and I've run those, and they've paced me or crewed me, and it's just that opportunity to kind of speak into other people's lives and do that, but at the same time work really hard to try to be somewhat decent at the sport, and not to win or not to really be on the podium, but we're all competitive.
Just to do your best.
Do your best, and at some point, if you're in the top 5, that's pretty awesome. But for me, that was just it was my outlet to find challenge, other than kind of the peak challenge stuff that I do. But it was my outlet to find challenge in something I really loved.
That's awesome. I want to go back to the word pace for a second, because not all of our listeners are familiar with all the lingo. When my friend Dave here says he paced someone for an event, let's say the Western States 100, that's a 100-mile run, and somebody, you have to qualify for that. And so somebody has qualified at a pretty high level they get to run this 100-mile event, which, a good competitive time is going to be around 24 hours for a normal person. And so this person gets to run for 24 hours, 100 miles, and they get a belt buckle, and they get maybe they buy a T-shirt, and they get to tell all their friends they ran and competed in Western States 100 miles. But they are competing, and an athlete, and they get a bib number and all that kind of stuff. And then if they want somebody to pace them, they say, hey, friend, would you mind running 20 to 30 miles with me in the dark, and you don't get anything. You're not a finisher. You didn't compete in the race, but you're just a good enough friend that you would fly across the country and run for several hours in the dark with me. Right? Is that a good summary of what it means to pace someone?
It's a great summary. And Western States is, for kind of different perspective, it's the Boston Marathon of ultra running in the United States. So there's UTMB that's over in Europe, but this is the event for ultra running. And people, like you said, you have to qualify, and they fight to get into this. But the interesting thing about this whole ultra running community is that it just oozes community and friendship because of those kind of entry points that you just talked about. A pacer isn't in the race. They're not registered. They have a bib that says pacer on it, but they don't get anything other than spending a whole lot of time helping a friend who's somewhat delirious at times get to the finish line.
And that's the whole reason for being is to help somebody else succeed at something that they care about.
And there's all kinds of rules of what the pacer can and can't do.
Yeah, because they're not a mule. Yeah, they can't carry stuff.
And so, but you're really there just to encourage and to guide and say, hey, we got 3 miles to the state station. When in fact, you're probably thinking, oh, it's only 0.5 miles from here. No, let your pacer do the math. I mean, those kind of things.
It's like an emotional support dog.
Yeah. And then you've got a crew. And a crew is, they meet you at the aid stations where they have access. Sometimes they don't have access to them. So they got to drive. I remember as crewing at Western States, I had to drive all the way over the side of the river, and it took me 5 hours just to get to one aid station. Driving. So I could help somebody for 10 minutes. And then I had to drive 5 hours back to another aid station just to help somebody for 10 minutes.
I know people can pause and rewind, but I just want to say that again. You drove for 5 hours to give about 10 minutes of support. And probably that support was something like, let me take your horrible shoes and socks off and let me give you a drink. And by the way, like, you might be yelling at me because you're grumpy or you're just throwing up on my shoes and like, you're not even like, how are you? And they're just grunting, but you gave them 10 minutes of love that may or may not have been very well received in the moment.
Yeah. Thank you for your abuse. Yeah. Let me drive 5 more hours.
Yeah. Let's do this again sometime. How about 5 more hours?
But it's those things at the end of the day when the underlying current underneath all that is a really strong commitment to the person that's running the race. Okay. And the same goes to the person running the race. Huge commitment to the crew and the pacers. And not just, hey, friendship, hey, look, we did this, let's go have a beer afterwards. I mean, those are kind of lifelong experiences, kind of like just points in your life that you can say, wow, somebody really, really cared about me, or I really, really cared about that person.
And a whole team.
Community did. They did it together.
Yeah, and so that crew, the people who are driving and filling up water bottles and taking off shoes and socks, and the pacer or pacers, they have an experience together. The runner has an experience. All of them have a camaraderie, and it's such a picture of love. It's just the right word for it. Of like that's what it means to show up for somebody, to love them, to have fun. Like, life is, love doesn't have to be boring or emotional. It can be a great adventure, and it can be really dusty and covered in vomit. And yet, like, that was life. Like, life well lived was that day we spent 9 hours driving around, and remember that time we got mad at each other and we were yelling because like we missed a turn or blah blah blah, and like, but that's a bond forever.
And some of those people on my crew or my team, or some of the people I've paced or crewed, not all of them are believers, but when I think about it, I think of, God uses something like this as a great example of, he's giving you somebody to pace, a mentor, to get you through, stage points in this life, because it is a life during the day. I mean, if you finish, sometimes there's cutoffs that are 30 hours or less, but like Western States, if you can get to 24, sub 24 gets you a different color buckle, by the way. That doesn't mean anything to most people.
No,
but for Western States people, that's a huge deal. But at the end of the day, you get, God gives you somebody to help pace you, and then he gives you this crew who are the unconditional love at all these aid stations that are doing whatever necessary to help you finish. I mean, it's just a beautiful picture of a bigger picture of the kingdom.
Yeah, and I haven't competed at that level in some of those races or any of those races, but as I watch them online, one of the things I see consistently, and I've experienced this at a lot of races, is how much everyone is cheering for everyone. And even the most elite people who are actually running for sponsors and for a living are their crew and their people are cheering for the other people. And the winner might finish 30 minutes before second place, but he or she's coming back out to like meet them at the finish line, to embrace them, to share memories of the trail, and to say, dude, you were catching up on me and I was getting nervous.
Yeah.
And is that your experience as well? I mean, that's what it looks like from afar.
It is. And in two perspectives. One, we have a runner in Omaha who's an elite runner, a Hoka runner named Casey Lichtide. And she's our friend, and she runs on the trails, and we see her all the time. But she's one of the greatest encouragers of other people. She'll do the same thing. You know, she I think she's finished, I don't know if you get this wrong, Casey, sorry, 8 Western states.
Wow.
She needs to finish 10 to get this really cool buckle, 1,000-mile buckle. But she finishes, she stays there and cheers other people on. In hometown Omaha, at races or on trails, if she sees you, says hi and talks to you and encourages you, which is really special because she's an elite athlete, sponsored by Hoka. But the other thing is true too. There's a thing at Western States called the golden hour. So it's the last hour, 29 hours to 30 hours. The cutoff time is 30 hours. And it's usually towards the 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock in the morning. And it's finished on a track, the Placer track in Auburn, California. The place is packed. It's 100 degrees out. Stadium is packed. And they're cheering on people that are finishing last. Last. And these people get more cheers than the lead runners, the elite runners. And the elite runners are there watching them and cheering these people on. And if you ever get a chance, if you ever just Google golden hour, it's pretty special because people are fighting to get to that finish line. And you see all the people that help them, the crew and the pacer are helping to run the last 400 miles on that, or 400 meters on that track. And there's times, if you're an ultra runner, it brings tears to your eyes because you know exactly how much work that person put in. And for that person to finish, not to get a buckle, whatever, but to finish, to meet that goal and to have the whole team be a part of that, hugely special.
Yeah, here in the Northwest, if some of our Seattle people want to experience this on some scale, is in the end of June over in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, is the Ironman. And it's the same thing. It's a 17-hour cutoff, and that last hour running down Sherman Street is crazy. And it's so beautiful. I mean, it brings tears to my eyes. I get goosebumps thinking about it. It's and I haven't really put a lot of thought into why, and we don't have time for all of that today, but there's something so unique and special about, kind of from an objective point of view, these are the people who are the worst at their sport. Like they're either finishing last, and some of them won't finish in time, and instead of having a time, they won't even get a hat or a belt buckle. It'll say DNF, did not finish, if they came in 10 seconds too late. But to see this group of encouragers and people, and strangers who don't even know them, screaming their heads off and cheering for the people who are struggling the most, is so different than so much else of life, where we applaud the half of a tiniest percent of the very most elite, and we could give a rep of anybody else. And to see that flipped upside down, where we're all running the same race. And in some ways, the people who take 30 hours have a much harder time than the people who take 15 hours. I mean, that's twice the time on the feet, twice the time. And certainly the elite runners are working very, very hard. But there's just something uniquely beautiful about celebrating somebody who's going through a hard time. And it's not pandering. If you haven't seen these videos, you could maybe sound like what Dave and I are describing is like patting on the head. It's not. Like, it's genuine joy for this other person.
Yeah. And to me, it's kind of like the kingdom. It's like, it's an upside down version of what we would expect. You know, in today's world, the winner is the winner. They get all the accolades. They get all the notoriety and attention. But at ultra racing is somewhat true, but not really. And I think the elites will recognize it. The golden hour is actually the favorite part of that race, and probably like Ironman as well, is you get to see ordinary people doing extraordinary things, spending twice as long as an elite athlete, and then they get to tell stories about what that looks like. And for me, I don't know if I told you, I'm a Hoka flyer, so I am an ambassador for a Hoka.
Congratulations.
Unpaid, but I've been running them for 10 years, and I love that. So I get to go out and talk to people about Hoka shoes, but more importantly about just the lifestyle, the community of what trail running is all about. And that just brings great joy to me, because you get to see people who've never experienced running, let alone trail running, put on a pair of shoes and realize that, hey, I can do this.
That's awesome.
I might be really slow, but I'm like, it doesn't matter. You're running, right? You're a runner.
Yeah. We'll see if Hoka will repost this episode for us, and we'll get a couple more downloads. So, Dave and I could talk for hours about this, and in fact, that's what we're going to get to do on Saturday.
Right.
It's amazing how I don't expect to run out of things to talk about. At the same time, I expect that we'll probably have a couple hours at least of silence spread throughout the day, and that's good too.
I think I mentioned the book I was reading. Silence is one of those spiritual disciplines that we've given up on in this world. Silence, some people think, awkward silence. Why do we have to say awkward? I mean, in some scenarios, maybe it is awkward, but it's okay to have silence. It's okay to sit back, avoid the wall of noise in today's world, and just take in. I was just in Colorado a couple weeks ago with P Challenge. I was hiking by myself before P Challenge started, and I was on this trail, and I just stopped and just listened for 2 minutes. And the sounds were just unbelievable. Babbling, little creek, the birds chirping, the wind in the pine. Just taking those moments of silence, which we'll have, whether it's because of pain or whether it's just because, or whether it's just we need a little bit of time.
You might not hear the babbling brook over my huffing and puffing and panting, but it'll be there in the background. I can go farther away if you want to take in some of the nature sounds. I actually, Brenda on staff here, and several of us were hiking a while ago, and I shared with her that that's something I like to do in the woods, and she said the same thing of stopping and trying to identify how many different unique sounds I can hear from this one spot. It's a very calming kind of practice.
Because our ears are not trained for that anymore. Our ears are so used to hearing so much white noise from so many directions that we really don't hear any of that anymore. Really hear it. It's just a cloud of noise.
Yeah, so silence might be good for us. It doesn't make for a good podcast, so we tend to not have too much silence here on the show. But I guess I'd encourage you to after this, maybe unplug for a little bit, go for a walk, maybe go for a slow walk, maybe lace up some running shoes. Running is hard and no fun for a long time.
Correct.
As somebody who's been running a lot of miles for a long time, so after this event, I'll probably take a few weeks off. And I know for certain that those first couple weeks afterwards are going to be painful. That I don't know how I'm going to run 3 miles and I'm going to want to quit. And I have this enough memory of if I stick with this for a couple weeks, 3 weeks, it'll start to get fun. 5, 6 weeks down, it gets more fun. And so if you're somebody who is listening to this today, like, I want to go for a run, I would encourage you to take it real easy, to take a lot of walk breaks, and to not be embarrassed if you're huffing and puffing, and give it a couple days and go back out there. And if it's kind of miserable for a week or two, that's sort of how it goes.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, you really have to kind of change your mindset, because it's not a goal. A goal is, I'm going to finish that race, marathon, half marathon. Here, it's a complete mindset. You're going to be a runner, and the process is ongoing. It never ends. So day one, you're a runner. You got out the door, right? Put your sneakers on. You went
get your Hokas laced up.
Yeah, you got your Hokas laced up. Speedo Fies, hopefully, by the way. I love the Speedo Fies. But you went 400 yards and you were out of breath. Fantastic.
Awesome. Yeah.
Fantastic. You know what? If tomorrow goes even worse, so what? You keep going because it's a process. It's a journey. Just like in life, you get back up.
Yeah. Very cool. Dave, this is going to be awesome. We need to go eat. We need to go shopping. We got to get ready. Listeners, our hope and expectation is after the run, Dave and I will be able to limp back into the studio here and to record a little follow-up of how it went. If we don't get to that, I'm sorry. And we intended to, but it just didn't happen. But that's our plan, I think. And we'll see what kind of stories we bring back from the trail that are able to be shared on a podcast.
Yeah, no, if we don't make it out of there, you'll see some of the special places you can donate your money to at the funeral. So
that's right. Know what we cared about.
Yeah.
Send money. No, we'll be safe. We'll be responsible.
Yeah.
We'll catch you on the other side of the mountain. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, Dave. Thanks for being here.
Yep. Thank you.
And
Appreciate it.
We'll catch you all later.
That's the end of the episode, but we want to continue the conversation. Continue the conversation by sharing this episode, subscribing, or leaving a review. Connect with us on Instagram at 2414 Podcast. Connect with us through email at 2414@stlukes-church.com. Or best of all, keep the conversation going by inviting someone to process with you, so that you can each walk away with more understanding that leads to more conversation as the journey continues. If you happen to be in the Seattle-Tacoma area of Washington, stop by on a Sunday morning and say hi. 2414 is a podcast produced by St. Luke's Lutheran Church in Federal Way, Washington. To find more content, discover upcoming opportunities to connect in person, or to support the show, head on over to stlukes-church.com. Thanks for walking with us.